welcome to the 2023 Australian International Airshow. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
So, absolutely.
Can we start with your name and Squadron, and tell us a little bit about the aircraft you fly?
Yeah, I'm Flight Lieutenant James Bailey, or Bales, part of 2 Squadron flying the E-7 that we've got down here today. It's awesome to be able to bring this platform down for the public to see. It's something that we're usually quite busy, so it's very rare for us to be able to park an aeroplane and people walk around and ask questions. It's a really good thing. I've been on the aircraft for a couple of years now, fortunate enough to be one of the captains here as well. We brought a crew down with us to be able to get the aircraft on display for everyone.
And can you tell us a little bit about your journey on your way to becoming a pilot in the E-7? Can you tell us how you got into the RAAF and your training and what it took to get where you are now?
Yeah, I've loved aeroplanes for a long time. My granddad was in the Royal Navy, then my dad was in the Air Force, so I'm sort of third generation of military in my family. Always wanted to be a pilot in the RAAF. After school, actually worked on aeroplanes and helicopters for a living and got my license there. Was getting to an age where I still wanted to be a pilot full time, still wanted to fly. The RAAF was always what I really wanted to be in. Put my application through and was lucky enough to be accepted. Then made my way through the pilot training system. I'm a little bit of a museum piece because I'm slightly older as I've gone in, and also flew the CT4 and the PC9, which are both retired, but they haven't put me in the RAAF museum with them yet, so I'm quite lucky. Straight from the PC9 after course, I did my conversion on the E-7. Was fortunate enough to, as a co-pilot, go overseas on the final Operation Okra flights as well, so I was able to operate the aeroplane over there with the crew that I was on at the time. Since then I've done some upgrades. I'm now a captain on the machine, so it was not that many years ago that I was on the other side of the fence at Avalon with my dad. We saw the first E-7 land in Australia. Didn't really think anything at the time that, fast forward 10 years later, and I'm fortunate enough to be the one on the ground that's flying this aeroplane here, and we get to see the guys fly this afternoon, presenting the airborne show as well. So things change quite quickly, and it's a really good place to work. 2 Squadrons are really good squadron to be part of as well.
Now, most people will look at this aircraft and go, yeah, it looks like your typical Virgin jetliner. That big radar on the top, what's it look? Does that change the flying characteristics at all?
It's actually quite similar. I've only flown the E-7 version of the 737, but from what we've been told, it's very similar to the standard Dash 700 series, which is what it's based off. It's a little bit draggier, obviously, because we've got that giant surfboard on the roof. So it's, but the actual flying characteristics are very, very similar, which is quite good because then we've got that commonality of training as well. We've got simulators up at Williamtown that we do a lot of our conversion training on, and pilot currency stuff, and that just reduces the wear and tear that we do on the actual airframe. But this aeroplane is all about that radar. It's a fantastic bit of kit that we've got. It's an Australian design as well that we incorporated, and we did the hard yards early on to get what we've got now. It's something we're really proud of as well, and the fact that some of our coalition partners have shown such great interest and have purchased it. As soon as a few days ago, the Americans have bought 24 of this type of aeroplane, so this is huge for Australia, and it's definitely something that we should be pretty proud of as well.
And how many of these aircraft do the RAAF actually operate?
Yeah, so we've got 6 of them, all at 2 Squadron, RAAF base Williamtown. We have a deep maintenance facility out of Amberley, so usually we can expect at least 1 aircraft in there just cycling through the maintenance. It's very often that we'll have aircraft overseas doing coalition engagements and exercises, especially your Red Flag series or Cope North Guam. So that's the kind of exercise we like to do.
Now, on a final note, for any of the young people watching that looking at a career in the Air Force, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I'd just probably say don't let anyone say no. I was maybe not the grade A student going through school. I still worked hard, but I did another career before I joined the RAAF. But I still always wanted to be in the Air Force. I worked quite hard to get my grades up to where they needed to be to do it. and it's the leading of aviation in this country. Yes, it's a 737, but the things that we get to do in it, and the places we get to go, you don't get to do that in the GA world, so to speak. So we're very fortunate. The RAAF is a great career, and you look at everything that's parked here today. You've got the opportunity to potentially work hard and end up in the front of one of these things, or in the back, depending on what you want to do, or even fixing it. I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all. It's definitely worth putting the hard yards in. So just come up to the nose landing gear. I'm just going to check the condition of the doors, make sure they're not wiggling too much. They obviously get a flight load on them, but we're just seeing to make sure everything's tight the way it wants. Our maintenance crew will pull the pins out before we step on board to make sure that the gear's going to retract correctly as well. But just the general condition, looking for any leaks, anything that's loose, anything that could have been damaged during landing. Up the top, we've got angle of attack sensor there, so we're making sure that that's not stuck. The pitot covers, once again, our maintenance crew will make sure everything's off before we step on board the aeroplane. Just making sure that nothing has hit the front on the nose, no damage or from things such as birds or any objects that could be in the air while we're on our last flight. Making sure any panels have been shut as well. The tyres, looking at the general condition of everything to make sure there's no slashes on the sidewall that could potentially fail when the aircraft's got the load on landing. Got our static ports, so making sure they're clear. Little birds love to go up inside, little bugs love to go up inside and make little nests in there, so we're just making sure that it's all clear. We've got quite a lot, an array of antennas and aerials underneath, so we're just looking to make sure that they haven't been struck by anything. There's no delamination on any of the edges there, and everything's hanging on the way that it should be. The door, this is where historically you'd have all your baggage. We've got some extra fuel tanks inside there, so we just make sure that the door is shut and that the surface is level. Coming down into the back, if we had the air conditioning, the packs on, this here would actually have an intake. It would be quite loud coming through here. We've got the flaps extended at the moment, so normally we wouldn't have the flaps out when we're doing a standard walk around, but it's a good opportunity. You can see up inside all of the rigging, all the hydraulic rams that we've got, just to see that there's nothing coming out of there and that everything's in the right location. Moving on to the engine itself, I'm having a look to make sure that the thrust reverser is stowed. There's no pins that have been left in at any stage. All the clips underneath are done up for the engine cowling. There's nothing that's dripping out underneath. Oil's always going to seep to the bottom, so we want to make sure there's no pooling underneath or anything from previous flights that could be worth getting our maintenance team involved in. Having a quick look at the leading edge, making sure once again there's no impact damage that's gone along here. Is the fan got any damage on it? Does it spin freely? Yeah, it's moving nicely, so that's good. It means there's nothing that's caught up in there that's going to hurt us. Coming to the other side, making sure all the clips and covers are closed. I go in here and have a look to make sure that we've got enough oil for the flight and that the cap's on securely and that our thrust reversers again are stowed and the pins are out. When I come into the back, just a general look, having a squiz to make sure nothing's been left in there. There's no signs of birds or debris inside any of the open covers. Along the wing here, we've got the leading edge flaps that are currently out at the moment. We're checking that the fueling station has been done up, so after we've had our fuel load put in, just looking for anything that's leaking, making sure of our manual fuel sticks are all up and secured. There's nothing dripping out of the fuel jettison. Kangaroo's been put on the right way. We've got lights, so we're making sure all the lights are on and that we've got our static wicks are all in play as well. It always helps to have a quick look at the flight controls, make sure they're secured and split pinned. your standard maintenance practices there as well. Coming around the back, exactly the same. I'm just looking for anything that's going to catch my eye, anything that looks out of the ordinary, which is worth us having a quick look at. Into the main landing gear, I'm having a look at the brakes. We've got these indicators here, so that's going to tell how much the brake is got before it's required for replacement. The strut extension on the oleo, so making sure it's got about a fist, which is roughly what you have on your Cessna as well. We use the same principle. The pins, making sure that the pins would be removed as well, and general condition of the landing gear. Watch your head and we'll come onto the back. Alright, now this is where I step back, looking at the radar, making sure all the covers are out, and the general condition of the operation that we're about to have. By turning the radar on, we need everything to be crisp and ready to go. Down in the back here, we've got another baggage bay, so just making sure that that's closed. We don't need any doors opening in flight. That would create some issues that we just don't want. Stepping onto the back, just making sure that there's no birds that have decided to nest up inside the outflow valve. The APU would normally be up and running, so it'd be quite loud here, but general condition of the leading edge, walking our way around the back and having a look at all of our equipment that we've got around the APU. Once again, I'm always wanting to make sure all the clips, everything's shut. People are humans and occasionally things can get left open. We're pretty talented at 2 Squadron in that regard, but I'm the last point before we go flying to sort of capture that, so it's my job to make sure the aeroplane's in a satisfactory way before we go flying. This is the ground service panel, which is used all the time. That's actually where we would empty the lavatory. So we're just making sure that those panels that are used quite often are always shut. When we get back to this side, we keep walking the whole way around. So I'll go back and check the landing gear again. Once again, looking at the brakes, having a look to make sure the pins are out, the security of the doors, the condition of the tyres, especially any sidewall damage is usually a no-go because that's where the tyre's going to compress and take all of its load. The flaps, we've still got them down, so having a look at all of the tracks and trunnions, any bell cranks, any rams, any hydraulic lines. I want to see anything that's dripping out of it. The jack screw, does it look dry? Is it lubricated correctly? Up to the flight control, same as the other side. I want to have a look, make sure there's definitely split pins in there and everything's done up, anything I can see. We're cutting across here a little bit. Moving back down towards the engine, we're lucky enough that the engine's open on this side here. Just the general condition inside to make sure it matches exactly what I think I'm going to be seeing and nothing's been left in place. So a little non-standard for us to have the engine open, but you can see that we've got there's a plethora of piping and we've got a lot of things there that could potentially leak fluids, which is why it's always worth having a look down the bottom, make sure nothing's dripping out. It's okay for the collector drain to have a few spots come out, which sometimes can smear up, such as this here. You get a slight little movement. Anything more than that's probably worth asking our techos, which we take along with us. Back into the front. Once again, I'm waiting to make sure that it spins. It does. There's no obvious damage around the outside or the intake at all, which is obviously going to be the first thing that gets a hit of anything as we're flying. Back up, the lights are serviceable. Looking underneath, the last look to make sure all the clips on the pack bay doors are all shut. We can open them up when it's quite warm just to help some airflow. So it's my last chance to have a look at that. And then before you know it, I've checked the static ports. I'm now back at this point where I started, and off we can go. We can jump on board and get going.
G'day, Sergeant Phil Marsden, 2 Squadron aircraft technician, known as a black-hander.
And how did you get into can you explain how you got into the RAAF and the process of becoming a black-hander?
Yeah, I grew up in a little country town that had a small airstrip used by Air Force planes as training, so that sparked my interest of aeroplanes from a young age.
Yep.
And also a knack for pulling apart things and wanting to put them back together. Just led me to wanting to be an aircraft mechanic.
Yep. And can you explain a little bit about what your actual job entails? Say working on the Wedgetail here, what's your primary role?
Okay, so as an aircraft mechanic, our role is to look after anything that moves on the aircraft. So the engines, the airframes, landing gear, flight controls, fuel system, hydraulic systems.
Yep. No. And since you've been in the RAAF, has it only been the E-7 you work with, or have you worked with other aircraft?
No, I grew up on the C-130 J Hercules. Spent a little bit of time working on classic Hornets.
Yep.
And I spent the last 5 years on the E-7 Wedgetail.
Oh. And with the E-7, are there any little nags that come up that are problematic, or is it a pretty much...
No, not so much problems with the E-7. It's very reliable based on the 737. We spend most of our time upgrading it and keeping it cutting edge. People?
Yeah. For any young people watching this wanting to get into the Air Force, what advice would you give them?
Google aeroplanes, always keep an eye on what the Air Force is doing, what's happening in the world of aviation, innovation. Do your research, figure out what each plane does and the role and how they all work together.
Yeah. Welcome to the 2023 Australian International Airshow. Thanks for taking your time out of your day to talk with us.
Yeah, sure. I'm Flight Lieutenant Corey Nine. Been an air battle manager at 2 Squadron for about 4 years now. It's a great place to work. We are the back-end air crew on board the Wedgetail. We provide the command and control early warning function, using the radar to operate and contribute into the air picture as well as the surface picture, and provide airborne command and control, integrating with all the fighters that are here at the air show today, as well as surface and land assets as well that we've got in the ADF. Yeah, so we work a lot with all the air assets that we've got in the Air Force. We also work a lot with the Navy vessels that are out there on the ocean, and then we work a lot with like ground units as well. So a lot of the ground C2 agencies.
In regards to the radar, can you give us a little bit more information about the radar and what kind of picture it paints in the back of the aircraft for what you've just explained?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an electronically scanned array, the multi-role electronically scanned array that we've got on the E-7 provides an air and a surface picture with an estimated range of roughly 400 kilometres to help out producing that air and surface picture.
And when you joined the RAAF, did you come directly straight onto E-7s, or what's your background before you got here? And can you talk about your training coming onto the Wedgetail?
Yeah, sure. So I joined through ADFA. Went to uni down in Canberra, and then we did some training in SAIL for initial employment training, and then up to SACTU, which is the School of Air Control training unit. And I was lucky enough to be posted to 2 Squadron post that, and been there for 4 years now since.
Great. And for any young people watching this and thinking about a career in the Air Force, what advice would you give them? Yeah,
work hard and find something that you think's interesting, and just go for it, because it'll take you all over the place. You'll meet some incredible people, and you'll have a good time doing it.
It came into service in 2009 and has been at the forefront of airborne early warning operations ever since. We've been involved in Operation Okra over Iraq and Syria, and also other sorts of capabilities like looking for MH370 as part of that operation back in 2014.
Get your cameras out, because this is the final pass for the Wedgetail. Mentioned a 17-hour mission. That is not possible without air-to-air refuelling.
Okay, so welcome to the 2023 Australian International Airshow. Thanks for taking your time out to speak with us today. I can just get you to start by introducing yourself and Squadron and what aircraft you're working on.
Yep, okay, so my name is Cliff Brown. I am a Flight Lieutenant Logistics Officer in number 2 Squadron. I joined the Air Force in 1994, started my career as an aircraft technician on Caribous up in Townsville with number 35 Squadron. I then moved from them to F-111s, worked with 1 in 6 Squadron for 10 years. I discharged from the Air Force in 2006, re-enlisted in 2010, moved up to Tyndall and worked with number 75 Squadron F-18 Classics, before then moving to 33 Squadron RAAF Base Amberley with KC-30s, where I deployed on Okra. From that I then commissioned to become a logistics officer and went to OTS, ADFA, Headquarters Air Combat Group, doing log planning, and I am now at 2 Squadron.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about your role as in logistics and with the Wedgetail in particular?
Yep, so in short, you don't fly without supply. My role entails moving items and fuel, other items and equipment from one place to another to ensure the aircraft have the parts they need and can fly when they need to fly.
Mm-hmm. So in regards to any deployment, so how far ahead of time do you need to start planning for say you guys come to the airshow here?
Yep.
Is it a week or 2 weeks before?
So it's several months. As soon as we know that we are going into a location, we know the dates and the timings, I'll start doing the planning for it, starting to talk to the host nation if it's an overseas exercise, and start getting contracts sorted and all the other bits and pieces required to ensure the pilot and the aircraft can land and have the support it needs when it arrives.
And what's the most enjoyable part of your job?
Just the people, really. You get to meet so many diverse people, so many backgrounds, so many different histories, and you get to work with different air forces. So it's not just Army and Navy within Australia. You get to work with coalition forces, so the USAF, the Canadians, the English, British, Kiwis. Yeah, it's just so great, so diverse.
Now, for any young people watching this, and if they are thinking about a career in the RAAF or in logistics like yourself, what advice would you give them?
Definitely give it a go. I've had a great career. I am now 3rd generation Air Force. My father was Royal Australian Air Force. My grandfather was US Air Force. My wife is ex-Air Force. Her father was Royal Australian Air Force. So obviously my background is Air Force, and we've all loved every bit of it. I'm sort of embracing the time I have left before I retire, but yeah, it's a great career. You get to travel the world, you get to meet so many different people, and you have a blast along the way.